there was other news in the AFC North. I think that's kind of this talking point for this segment as we go around the North of it felt like a lot of teams didn't go out and make some big signings, and some kept their guys, the biggest one being the Bengals. And, yes, they kept Jamar Chase, who we kind of all expected them to keep. Did we expect them to keep T. Higgins? Well, stop traffic, they did, and combined in those contracts is $276 million. And Chad Ochocinco and Shannon Sharpe started this conversation on what's that mean for the Bengals moving forward. So let's play part of that clip for you guys, and we're going to react on the other side.
Congratulations, brother Jamar Chase, brother T. Higgins. They got that deal done. Joe Burrow, I know Joe is happy, very happy to keep that unit together. Obviously, me, I didn't think it would be possible. Obviously, I can't break down the numbers right now in front of me, but the fact that Joe was able to keep the two main targets, keep the two main guys together, man, is a really good thing, and that's a step in the right direction for us in finishing, what we need to get back to the promised land at the end of the season. So I'm happy for them. I'm excited, and kudos to the Blackburn family, to Mike Brown, and getting that done. And let's get some work on that defense end now.
Yeah, I don't see how they pay Trey Hendrickson. He wants north of $30 million.
Right. Yeah.
I don't see how. I'm not saying it can't be done. I just don't see how.
Do you think it's possible to still pay Trey? What do you think? I mean, that's tying all the money up and just in four players.
He's gonna want north of 30.
Right.
The man has 35 sacks in 2 years. Nobody has that many sacks in the past 2 years.
Right.
He's been a Pro Bowler both years. I just don't. Like I said, could it happen? Yes. Yeah. The question is that you have to ask yourself, Ocho, is the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl, potentially win it over the next 2 years, is that worth potentially being in salary cap hell in 27, 28?
Right.
So right there, that's kind of the conversation. I think we can all say the Bengals offense is going to look pretty damn good. They might put up 30, 40, 50. On the other side, they might give up 30, 40, 50. Now, fair to say, I think the Bengals defense was a little bit better, not middle of the pack last year. They're a playoff team. They were very bad last year.
I'll go a step further. If the Bengals defense was just top 25, it felt like they would have been. That's why, listen, I understand that there are people who don't agree with paying that much for two players, especially two players at the same position at once. It's what the Bengals has made them successful, is the fact that they're like, hey, we can drop 40 on you in an instant. And it's, if anything, these past two moves with Jamar and with T, it makes it that, Ocho and Shannon are talking about, can they re-sign Trey? What does this mean? You have to re-sign Trey now. Like, you have to, because now with all the money, built up on offense, like Shannon said, no one's come close to the amount of sacks he's had the past 2 years. He is that pass rush single-handedly at times. They need to keep him. You got to draft well, but I see people saying like the Bengals screwed up doing this. I don't think so, personally. I don't think they screwed up at all, because if you have two of the top playmakers in the league, the way I look at it is, if the Ravens had Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both at wide receiver, would I be upset about this move? Not at all. When you have that big of a weapon arsenal at your hands, especially with a Joe Burrow at quarterback, I think you keep this going as long as you can. Could it end up not working out because they give up 50 points a game? Maybe, but they got to draft well. I don't know how many picks they have. I would use every single one of them on defense. But if they could just hit on one or two defensive picks, I think this works out for them.
I think so too. I mean, look, I get it. I mean, you're wondering, where's the money going to go? T. Higgins and Jamar Chase duo last year had the most receiving yards, and T. Higgins missed 5 games. Now, granted, unique New York, Kevin. Unique New York.
There you go.
Which movie?
Anchorman.
Wow.
See, and that was context clues too.
was-
I didn't know that one. I knew that because what do you do before you go on air? You do some vocal exercises.
There it is.
Right?
Very good.
Jeff Arnold gave us whether the weather be fair, whether the weather be not, we're together, whatever the weather, whether you like it or not.
He remembered.
Don't know if that was the ending.
I messed up in the middle.
First
No.
part,
first and last were good. I forgot what the middle was.
But he remembered that.
Yeah.
But
I remember weird things.
I digress. But let's talk about what we do remember. The Bengals are going to be a threat. And I think if we're looking at the rest of the AFC North, Steelers still got a lot of questions of who they're going to have as their quarterback. Yes, they got Metcalf and they have Pickens. Are they drafting a guy? Are they bringing in a guy like Rodgers? The Browns, Kevin, they signed Myles Garrett. Talk about being in cap hell. They are in a tough position. It still feels like it's Baltimore's division. I think it's just going to be for the Bengals, and I'll go with Zach on this point. We've seen another team spend a lot and not maybe care as much about picks and lock up some bigger names. The Rams have done this and drafted well. Yeah. It feels like that the Bengals' room for error is going to be higher with on the defensive side because let's just face it, it's just there's not going to be you can go out and get the impact players through trade or free agency right now. You're going to have to develop them to have a chance to be able to take on Baltimore, to take on the Chiefs, and the rest of like the AFC West that seems to be getting better at the same time.
Yeah, I just personally don't think Cincinnati handled it very well. I mean, I think that it was probably the right thing to do to obviously Jamar, but to also bring back T. Higgins. But, Jake Lisco, who's one of Locked On Bengals hosts, he put this out on Twitter a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, and he ended up saying that, hey, you dig in over $1 million today just to lose $5 million tomorrow because that's the way the contracts are going. Didn't we talk about this last offseason with Dallas? Where it's like if Dallas had just paid Dak and CD before everybody else got paid, they would have saved the amount of money where they could have signed Derrick Henry instead of Zeke Elliott, and maybe that season looks different for them, or maybe they're able to go out there and do different things. Whereas for Cincinnati, they watched Myles Garrett get that huge mega deal, and obviously they said, oh, well, we're going to make Jamar the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. And so that was a different threshold before Myles got signed, and all of a sudden it's okay. Well, now the price just went up, and it just seemed like the price goes up every single time these premium positions get paid. And like that's even for like a Lamar, where Jalen Hurts set the standard, then Lamar got paid after that, and it was just a little bit more than Jalen, but that's just how this thing works. So I think for Cincinnati, they have freed up some cap space by doing this just because of the fifth-year option and the franchise tag. You lower those cap hits in year one. I think they have enough money to re-sign Trey Hendrickson, but Zach, to your point, it's like, yeah, they should spend every pick on defense, but they can't because they still need offensive linemen too. Like the issue is they also don't have a good offensive line. I mean, you hope Orlando Brown can bounce back. Marius Mims will probably step in for Trent Brown this season, but their guard position right now is just there are question marks there. So I think the AFC North finishes the same as it did last year. I think it's Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland.
I know we're not talking about them right now, but you brought it up. No one has put on a clinic on how to just mishandle contracts over the past few off seasons like the Dallas Cowboys. And it kind of has been an example for the rest of the league of like, hey, yeah, these negotiations might suck now, but if you get it done, 2 years before free agency, you're actually saving $15 million because Micah Parsons just got it's like a $35 million pay raise in his next contract because of where he was supposedly negotiating last year to now Myles Garrett gets it. You go 5 years, add $6 million to that each year because now Myles Garrett has changed the ceiling, changed the level. It just is. And, it's the same with the Bengals. I'm sure they would love to have gotten this all done last year. And then they could have had the sole focus been on Trey this year. If the Bengals get Trey done, he's going to play in Cincinnati next year, just whether or not it's a long or short-term deal. It's going to be all about the draft. They're going to have to get the secondary, just the defense somewhere, just like we said, slightly better. Like that's the thing that I feel like we're missing with the Bengals is just get slightly better. And that's why I'm still worried about them. Why I see them as a legit threat, because it wasn't like they were losing these games, 70-40. It was 41-40.
Well, and the Ravens' two losses to the Ravens were by a combined 4 points, one in overtime and a 2-point conversion away from whammy The Ravens lose both those games. Thankfully, they didn't. They did not.
Yeah.
And then there was some heartbreak that happened.
And that's why I think
it's
it's all about, they just have to get slightly better on defense, and I think they're set up well.
They are set up well. It should be fun.